Let's find out the 7 extraordinarily richest people whose names are already cast in stone. Speaking of the richest, you might be thinking of these people. No doubt that the ones you've seen are currently the richest. But in today's video, we'll talk about a different level of the richest of the rich. Number 7 is the world's wealthiest Indian who ever lived. He is Osman Ali Khan. Today, there are people in Asian countries who live in 27-story houses, and they aren't close to Osman Ali Khan. He's the last ruler of Hyderabad. Osman Ali Khan was the head of the princely state from 1911 until India annexed the country in 1948. When your ruler is known to be the wealthiest man on the planet, despite sharing an era with Rockefeller, JP Morgan, Rothschild, and other well-known business tycoons, it's a mystery how the country remained independent for that long, especially when it had the sole running diamond mine in the world at that time. Being in charge of a country that was the only supplier of the global diamond trade, accumulating $230 billion, is the basic minimum one can earn. Osman Ali Khan introduced roads, electricity, railways, and an airport to his citizens. He also managed to obtain luxurious things for himself. For example, 100 million worth of silver and gold, over $500 million of extravagant jewels, and even the Jacob diamond, one of the biggest diamonds in the world. It is worth approximately $50 million. Number 6 is known as the last Russian emperor. Introducing Nicholas Romanov. He had $300 billion while his subjects were extremely poor. There were definitely social injustices during his ruling. How could he ever get a vast amount of wealth while his citizens were so poor? The answer is because of America, more specifically, Alaska. Nicholas Romanov was the one who sold the oil-rich peninsula to America in his fear of losing it to the British. Of course, when he sold it, he had no clue how rich in resources the land was. He and his family lived in absolute luxury that could even be considered lavish during these times. He had remarkable palaces in St. Petersburg and Moscow. One of his palaces is called the Kremlin, where today Vladimir Putin resides. Number 5 was a very successful military leader. He is Mansa Musa. In the 14th century, Mali's Emperor Musa I was considered the wealthiest man on earth. He had an estimated net worth of $415 billion, adjusted to today's currency, of course. When Mansa Musa reigned in 1312, Europe was not as advanced and likable as it is today. There were constant wars, famine, and various plagues that were on the land. The Black Death was even on its way and soon demolished the whole continent. African kingdoms had an opportunity to rise and flourish, and Mali was dominating on the list back then. Once in power, Mansa Musa conquered the city of Timbuktu, which was the most significant trade city in Africa, comparable to Constantinople. These conquests came with some perks, making Musa the wealthiest man on earth. In 1324, he showcased his immense wealth by traveling to Mecca with a caravan stretching as far as the eyes could witness. He was carrying a lot of gold with several thousands of horses and camels. With him were tens and thousands of people as his attendants, and built mosques everywhere he stopped and rested, so that he could pray to Allah appropriately. Number 4 on our list gained a reputation for brutality. He is William the Conqueror. The royal family of England is often considered to be the wealthiest family on earth. Their $88 billion and incredible wealth are smaller than their ancestors. The first king of England, William the Conqueror, not only managed to take control over the British island when he was 38 years old, but also collected an expansive fortune that today would convert to a ridiculous amount of $228 billion. 1/3 of them were only from taxes that he collected from the peasants in Normandy. So they were either very wealthy peasants or were very heavily taxed. The rest of his fortune came from the dominated British territory. Local barons who wanted to keep their land and lives had to swear an oath to the new king and pay ridiculous taxes. William the Conqueror thought that was way too small to share with the people, so with $228 billion, he spent money on building infrastructure. Number 3's period is considered to be one of the most prosperous periods in the history of Israel. He is King Solomon. In the Bible, King Solomon is described as the richest ruler in the world. According to the Old Testament, he received around 25 tons of gold yearly for a total of 39 years straight. So step aside Elon Musk, because experts have even calculated that over his rule, Solomon's wealth would be equal to $2.2 trillion in today's money. According to the Bible, all his spending was strictly virtuous, and he even paid to build the very first Jewish temple in Jerusalem. Number 2 was originally named Gaius Octavius. He is none other than Augustus Caesar, the first emperor of the world's biggest country. Augustus Caesar accumulated riches, which in today's conversion would equal to $4.6 trillion. This ridiculous amount of net worth sounds a bit over the top until you realize Augustus Caesar personally owned Egypt, which was accountable for feeding half of the empire. Along with having an entire country, he was calculated to have at least 10 million gold coins left by his uncle, Julius Caesar. Those 10 million gold coins are calculated to be equal to $200 billion in today's money. A lot of this money was spent on infrastructure, monuments, roads, and temples built with Augustus' money as he joined his personal finances with that of the Roman Empire. Not to mention, several millions was spent yearly on the public's entertainment as Augustus funded gladiator fights, chariot races, and other sports events. Probably one of his most significant possessions was his very own personal army, composed of 250,000 soldiers. Number 1 on our list created a powerful military system and instituted effective political and social reforms. He is Akbar I. The Mughal Empire is a Far Eastern empire that once governed most of the Indian subcontinent, and the land south and west of the Himalayas had not much influence on Western culture. But to South Asia, its impact was crucial. Its significance is mainly because Akbar I would one time be said to have ruled over 25% of the world's GDP. This makes his grandeur wealth of $21 trillion a bit less remarkable. Akbar I lived a luxurious lifestyle, even by today's standards. Akbar built himself huge palaces in Delhi, Agra, and Fatehpur Sikri. He decorated them beautifully with a vast amount of gold. The interior design was embellished with marble, silk, and plenty of artwork. He even tried to develop his own religion by combining Hinduism and Islam. It was actually a political movement trying to solidify a nation that was harshly divided by religion. Being the richest man in history will only cast your name in stones, but how you lived your life and the legacy you're leaving is another thing. We're Ignite Crunch. See you in our next video.